Okay, we are live. We are here in the Nutmeg Tavern. It is Friday, and welcome. Come on in. We're going to have a great session today. We're going to be talking about chocolate and decorated Easter eggs, and lots of. I got a table full of stuff here to cover, so it's going to be a lot of fun. I have Ivy on the console. Thank you, Ivy, for coming in. She was just walked in the door, so if she messes everything up, it's because she's flustered. Lauren is on the console, so thank you, Lauren, for taking comments and all that good stuff. And wow, it is really exciting to be in the Nutmeg Tavern again with everyone here. I know I just did one last week, but this is going to be even better. I figured, hey, a lot of people have the day off, and it would be a perfect day to do a live stream. And I have just so much fun stuff to cover. I'm going to jump right into chocolate because it's so exciting a topic. We've got an episode coming up on Monday, so make sure to check out Chocolate for Breakfast. It's going to be a great episode. Chocolate is really important to 18th century America. You wouldn't think that chocolate's one of those things. Did they even have chocolate in colonial America? Yes, it's an important part of a lot of people's breakfast. In fact, more important in North America than it is in Europe, especially for middle and lower class people. It was way out of reach for people in Europe, but here in America, they're eating it, they're enjoying it, and we can too. In the episode that I do, I process chocolate from the raw beans. I've got some, here you go, you can't see them here, but there's a bowl here of raw cacao beans, and we process them in the episode to the roasted and shelled cacao or cocoa at that point. Then we grind it and process it and we make a drink, and it's a lot of hard work making chocolate. Thank goodness we don't have to work that hard making chocolate. So chocolate is one of those really amazing things that is from the Americas. That Mexico area, the Aztecs were using chocolate as a food. And when the Spanish come over, they say, whoa, this chocolate stuff's pretty interesting, but it'd be a lot better if we just added a whole bunch of sugar to it. And all of a sudden, ta-da, we get what we think of as chocolate. I don't know if I would want to eat that other stuff as food because it is strange and bitter and I don't know. I mean, I guess we just have to try it out. But I can't imagine eating unsweetened chocolate. Have you ever tried like baker's chocolate and just, no, it's no good at all. It becomes a popular thing. The Spanish bring it into Europe and then it starts to spread around. It shows up in England in the middle of the 17th century, so like 1650s and whatnot. You start to see colonial records. There aren't many colonial records to find. A lot of them are missing, but you start to see colonial records as early as the 1670s or late 1670s, where someone talks about, hey, our ship loaded with cocoa beans was lost at sea. So we knew it was coming in, but they didn't get there. Chocolate. A great reference. Let me see what I got here. No, that's the wrong one. A great reference about 16. Here it is. I knew I had it around here somewhere. 1670. Dorothy Jones and Jane Barnard. They are given approval to serve coffee and chocolatto, or actually it's chocolatto. Anyway, chocolatto in their houses of public entertainment. That's like a tavern. It's not anything else there. So that's 1670. They're given permission to serve that in Boston. 1680, we have customs records of cocoa beans coming in from Jamaica to Boston. And we find out about other, as we go later on, we find lots and lots of colonial records. So once we get into the 18th century, about the popularity of making chocolate. And they are doing the raw chocolate beans. They're importing those into places like Boston, Rhode Island, New York, and Philadelphia. They're roasting them, they're shelling them, they're grinding them, they're mixing them with spices and sugar, reprocessing them, casting them into bars, and then that's getting either used for domestic purposes or shipped within the colonies. And there's a lot of shipping of, processed chocolate back and forth. In fact, Boston's where most of that kind of comes out of. A lot of chocolate gets made in Philadelphia, but it doesn't get exported out to other colonies. They just eat it all up there. I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I've got some of the chocolate that I made for the episode here in the cup. It's mixed with a little bit of sweetener, and I need to mix this up. And in the 18th century sense, you would use your chocolate pot. You couldn't just make it in anything, right? You'd take your chocolate pot, you'd fill it up with your chocolate grindings or whatnot, and then you had your mulling stick. So you would use this mulling stick to properly mix it up. Now I'm not doing it in the pot, so I can't go crazy, but you're supposed to, froth it up in there with that. And I may cause myself a lot of problems here. I knew I was gonna do that. We mix our chocolate up, and did I already put nutmeg in this? I need, even if I didn't. Yes, occasionally nutmeg is in the recipes, so I'm not breaking the rules by adding nutmeg into my chocolate. What I found was interesting was that especially the less you sweeten it, and if you process it exactly like, what I did and what I hope was in the method that they used in the 18th century, it comes off a little bit more coffee-like. Definitely not the hot chocolate that you might be used to. It's pretty close, pretty close. In fact, we sell, on our website, we sell the popular chocolate. And this is authentic Mexican chocolate. And it's very, very, very close to the 18th century style. And it's kind of brick-like. This isn't meant to be eaten as a chocolate bar, but turned into what they would have mostly used chocolate for in the 18th century, which was this hot drink. If you ask for chocolate, what they think you are asking for in the 18th century is a chocolate drink, not a chocolate confectionery. Sometimes they would make a chocolate confectionery. It would be, they would call it chocolate almonds. And they would make it up not as with an almond in it, but in an almond shape, like a little chocolatey thing there. They would use various things. So I rattled on here for a little bit about chocolate. I'm going to let Lauren, if she's got any questions, to jump in, and I'll cover more chocolate as we go.
Well, first, are you going to share some of that chocolatey libation with Daniel Banks? You just going to keep it all to yourself?
Daniel, if you want to come around to the bar here, he'll serve you some.
So REF was wondering if they used more or less sugar in their chocolate. Probably didn't.
The recipes seem, I don't know exactly how much sugar is in a, hold on. You know what? I think I'm missing all my wonderful chocolate documents. Oh, it's all right. Let's see. Here is Hannah Glass in her recipe of chocolate. And she says, take 6 pounds of the nuts, and then she's got a whole bunch of crazy spices, and then 6 pounds of loaf sugar. This is pretty similar. The other one down here says take 6 pounds of the best Spanish nuts and 3 pounds of sugar. I don't know exactly, speed and style, Tony. I don't know exactly, what's all the ratios, but that's pretty typical. Either 1-to-1 or twice as much chocolate, half as much sweetener. And they would process it in 2 different ways. So the chocolate maker himself might make a little batch that is 100% chocolate, and they would call it all nut. And then he would make other kinds of batches that already had the sugar made up in them. So depending on maybe how you wanted it, maybe you didn't want the same kind of sweetness that other people wanted, and so you would get the all nut version, and then you could add the sugar that you were interested in. And, well, there you go. There's the answer to that one.
Pigu Guru says, did they have cocoa powder, or was it just in bar form?
They usually did it in this bar form, and then you would grate it off of that to turn it into your powdered form. So they are creating a powdered form, but then the chocolate maker would take that powdered form. They're not pulling the oils out of it. So a later on process in the 19th century is where they extract and separate the powder from the oils. Or butter, as you might call it, like cocoa butter. So this is all mushed together. They really weren't separating those out yet.
I have a couple super chats. So Yuxter Thorzine says, "Happy Easter, everyone."
Thank you.
And Frontier Patriot says, "Happy Easter to the Townsends family and crew from Ron and Justine."
There we
and then
go.
There's a little egg and a little sheep and a little flower. So a couple off-topic questions. So somebody was asking a question about the smokehouse.
Yes.
How did Brandon get the boards made? Are they milled? And then is there maybe a video in the works about making boards with a pit saw?
Yeah, we have a pit saw. We do. And we had plans to do some pit sawing last summer, but that didn't happen. So the boards that we used were from the Colonial Mill next door. In other words, I made them on a sawmill. So they were all hand sawn out. I sawed them all, but not with the pit saw. I couldn't do that, or else it would have been like 3 years until we were able to make the smokehouse. But they were all milled from logs that we had, and it was all done by us.
And then Rob Neath says, "Please do episodes featuring the sailing world." And I don't know if he's run across the ones you've
Yeah, so he's probably mentioning, and it's like, I want more of the Poor Sailor's Feast. So that was about 3 or 4 episodes ago. Make sure to go and watch that like 100 times because it's really good. And we have done some other ones. We went up to Friends Goodwill last 2 years ago. So there are some Friends Goodwill episodes where we're out on their ship and doing a couple episodes like that. Maybe some folks can find a link and drop them in the chat for you. So, yep, there are a few, and I'd love to do more. I just don't happen to have an ocean or a giant lake nearby, or a multi-masted vessel. But, maybe I'll get out in the little sailboat and do an episode for you.
Francis is in the chat. Hi, Francis.
Hi, Francis.
Roland Deshane says, "I have a question. Would a cocoa tree grow better in tropical soil or black muddy soil?"
Well, they really certainly do need a particular kind of environment. They are growing in Central and South America a lot, like in Venezuela, and they're also growing in the Indies, in the West Indies. And there are multiple kind of islands there, Spanish islands, French islands, and British islands. And they're growing those chocolate plants, trees, what's it called? Theobroma cacao. Yes, Theobroma cacao, food of the gods. That's growing. They transplanted and started growing those all over in that region. And even in the 18th century, they're growing in those areas. I don't know about the soil they particularly like, but I am sure that the books of the time period actually talked about the specific soil types. And interestingly enough, the people in the 18th century, like today, if you go to fancy coffee shops, and it's like, oh, do you want the Ethiopian coffee? Do you want the South American coffee? You can be very particular about the taste profile of coffee from particular regions. Chocolate was the same way in the 18th century. It's like, oh, you don't want the coffee from X and Y, this island. You want it from that place because it's sweeter and less bitter. And then other people preferred the more bitter flavored chocolate. It's good stuff.
Michael Evansburg says, "Was honey ever used in chocolate?"
I didn't see any references to honey, but let me tell you the other things they put in chocolate, just for the fun of it. And now this is Anna Glass, and she's got 2 recipes. One is very simple, and one is insane. So The first one, 6 pounds of cocoa nuts, a pound of aniseed, 4 ounces of long pepper. That's not black pepper. That's that really strange, kind of real hot, spicy kind of black pepper, I guess you might call it, but totally different species. Cinnamon, which is very, very common. A 1/4 pound of almonds, pistachios, a kind of hot pepper, musk, ambergris. You can tell this is an older recipe for having ambergris in it. Then it has the sugar. Then it has nutmeg. And then they mix all that up. You can then, maybe you want to add some orange flower water or rose water in it. No, thank you. And then at the very bottom, or this second recipe, this is very, very telling here. Starts off with our just the nuts, sugar, cinnamon, and then the final ingredient. Well, no, there's 2 more. Then they put in vanilla. It's the only recipe in this entire cookbook in the 18th century, and this is Hannah Glass, the most popular recipe book person in the time period. It's the only recipe with vanilla in it. And then they add cardamom to the very end. So they're adding all kinds of things, but as a sweetener, I've only seen sugar.
So Frontier Patriot was wondering when they might have started making chocolate candy. Did you run across that anywhere?
They're making chocolate candy fairly early. It's just not as popular as the drink itself. And you'll find a reference in something like Eliza Smith, and she talks about making those chocolate almonds, and that's in the 1730s. So you're going to find chocolate fairly early being used as a candy. It's just not as popular. I don't think they're, I think, it kind of gets mushy and they can't control the temperature as well. So chocolate's a little tougher. They don't have that wonderful, candy shell you can put on the outside like M&M's, so you can ship it in crazy weather.
REF says, any 18th century instructions for getting chocolate stains out of your clothes?
I didn't look for chocolate stains. Probably not. The nice part about chocolate stains is you can always smell them. It's like, yes, that was good.
Youngster Thorzine says, did they have any alcoholic chocolate drinks? Yeah. What?
No, wait a minute. I think someone might have to run and go find my papers. Maybe
Are
I've
they
got
just
them
on your
here.
desk?
Probably.
Have them put ground knives. They're on the flat surfaces.
Yeah.
Somebody was saying that they were your chocuments.
Chocuments, yes. If they find them, yes. If not, there is a recipe in, it's not this one, is it? There is a recipe in one of the cookbooks that was for chocolate wine. So yes, was the answer to that. But here's a fun one. Chocolate in other dishes is pretty rare. They have chocolate puffs, chocolate cream, those are obvious, right? But what about this one? It's, where is it? Oh, yes. Sea duck. I'm not sure what a sea duck, does it just any sea duck? Anyway, there's a bunch of sea duck recipes here. Sea duck with chocolate in a ragu. Having picked and cleaned and drawn your sea duck as before, let it be washed, broiled a little while upon coals, and afterwards put into a pot, seasoned with pepper, salt, bay leaves, and herbs. Then a little chocolate is to be made and added thereof, prepared at the same time a ragu of capon livers, morels, mushrooms, truffles, and 250 of chestnuts. That's going to be one heck of an expensive dish in chocolate with, look at all those documents. See, I got too much. Got too much. No, not that. No, not that. What about those? Yes. Ooh, takes a lot to come up with all this good stuff. Here we go. Had to collect the whole book. Oh, yes, here. To make wine chocolate, take a pint of sherry or a pint and a half of red port, 4 ounces and a half of chocolate, 6 ounces of fine sugar, a half an ounce of white starch, or refined flour. Mix, dissolve, boil these as before. Put it. If your chocolate is sugar, then you don't have to. It already has sugar, and then you mix that up. So there you go. And there's a chocolate recipe for chocolate biscuits and milk chocolate. Makes me hungry just looking at it there.
There is a member chat from Midwest Minuteman sitting at work, eating lunch, and joining the tavern.
Yay!
There is a super chat from Bridget Goddess. Do you have a favorite cocoa or chocolate recipe from your research?
I think just making it up as a drink. Now, the most fascinating, caught me totally off guard about the, making a chocolate drink, right? So this is made. You take the cacaos and you roast them like coffee, and the shells pop off like chaff. How when peanuts have those little skins on them, right? Not the peanut shell, but the little skin on the inside. Those little skins adhere onto this nut really, really hard. And so you have to roast it, and then that loosens it up, and then you peel that off, which is not easy all the time, and then you get the inside, and you just grind that up into powder. And normally you'd look at these little like peanut skins, right? And you'd say, oh, this is the stuff you throw in the trash. Oh, no, don't do that. This was a favorite of Martha Washington. She ordered up pounds and pounds of the skins or the shells of chocolate, and you would use that like tea. You'd take that and steep it in hot water, take the shells out or let them settle to the bottom, and you had a chocolatey drink, but a lot more like tea. Fascinating.
There is a member comment from Mike Crook. Happy Easter to Townsends and everyone with a little chick and a little rabbit.
Thank you, Mike.
And then Lori So Stuff sent in a message, and she was asking about the Ryan apple to see if he was okay. And I thought you might tell her what he was working on and mention the catalog in that.
Yes, perfect. List. Perfect segue. Thank you. Ryan is busy in catalog land right now, laying out and getting ready for the brand new catalog. This is last year's catalog because obviously I don't have this year's catalog because Ryan is just finishing it up. It's going to be going out to the printers like momentarily. If you're interested in getting one of our print catalogs, and it has all the crazy, it's got cool pictures of me in it. I mean, obviously everybody would enjoy this. But if you're ever interested in, a tricorn hat or a crazy pair of glasses or Mexican chocolate. It's all in the print catalog. If you want to go to our website, you can request a catalog and it will go out in the mailing. It won't even cost you anything. It's crazy. So you might want to throw a link to that catalog request page. Lauren.
I dropped it in the chat.
Woo! Thank you.
Michael Falmhar says, I actually have a can of cocoa shell and mint tea inspired by Martha Washington's favorite.
Yay!
Sounds delicious.
It is good.
Okay, I think we're mostly caught up. Do you want to get into pictures?
Yes. Let's get into pictures of chocolate. Look at that. There is the chocolate fruit off of the chocolate tree. And it's this weird, and these are big, like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 inches, maybe a little bigger. Sometimes you see them and they kind of turn a red color, brown color as they start to ripen. And these pods are taken and kind of smooshed up, and you can see the beans sort of in there. Those white things are in a little white, I don't know, membrane or whatever. They take that and smoosh that up and they let it ferment. And then after a while, they take the seeds out and they let them dry in the sun. And that's the raw cacao bean. And this is a botanical picture from our time period. This is 1783, so later on. So you can see somebody, obviously he couldn't take a picture of it for us, so he did his next best. He sketched it for us. I thought he did a pretty darn good job. And there is the bowl of raw cacao. This has just been dried, maybe heated just enough so that it isn't going to rot, but it hasn't been roasted. And they smell kind of a winey, because you can smell that fermentedness to the outside of them, but they're kind of like a winey chocolate. So there's the raw beans. And here are the roasted beans with the shells removed. So this is what it looks like on the inside. And after you peel off that hard to get a little skin off your chocolate bean. And there are close-up of those shells. And I am just, let me tell you, I don't know how they get the chocolate flavor in there, but they did a great job. I don't know. Whoever invented the chocolate plant did a great job. Here is a, do you remember the date on this, Lauren? This
It's early, like 1650 or
Yeah.
It's 17th century.
You're right, 17th century little journal here, and someone did a quick sketch of their chocolate pot. And these chocolate pots are really from very early, maybe even from the Central American design, and it gets transplanted into Europe, the pot design here. So, and probably started off as a gourd, and the original pots, and then of course we make them into different materials. You can see there standing beside this the muller that you would put between your palms and mix that chocolate up. And here are a couple of 18th century silver designs for chocolate pots. This classic side handle and sterling, these are going to be the most expensive pieces. You'll find them in lower quality or less expensive versions also, in copper, of course, and ceramics, other materials like that. But of course, this is the high class service. This is the stuff that you can always find in museums because people bothered to save it rather than the other stuff that got broken or turned into something else. And this one's actually a toy one. It's a tiny one, but you can see the mulling stick there for mixing it up. And that looks like it would actually work really, really well. I don't know how much chocolate you could make, probably, a quarter of an ounce or something. Not much of a chocolate drink. Here's a painting, a still life of food, and we see the chocolate pot there. This is undoubtedly a Spanish origin, so it's got a little bit different look to it, much closer to that original Central American design for a chocolate pot. And this is an advertisement. So a chocolate maker's sort of business card. And you can see he has fine crown chocolate, best plain chocolate, and just good, not best, but good plain chocolate. Excellent quality. Really, it's pretty darn good. Here's someone enjoying their morning cup of chocolate. And she has her chocolate pot. And they would call them little dishes. They would call them chocolate dishes, even though, we would just call it like a coffee cup. And there is another morning cup of chocolate probably being taken to someone, waiting for their breakfast in bed. And there's somebody being served their chocolate. We can tell, look at that. It's nice brown, chocolatey. Look at that tumbler with the glass, with the gold
I
rim.
was so impressed by that.
Yeah, I want that. Probably real gold, too. This is a service that has a platter and the various vessels, but the scene that's painted on these is a chocolate scene. And it kind of tries to get all the chocolate things squished together in that. Sometimes, maybe the things aren't happening all at once like is painted in the scene, but pretty close. We got some close-ups here.
Yeah, go ahead. There.
And here's our chocolate trees there with the pods growing on them fermenting them and stripping the seeds out or the beans out. there's even someone making chocolate there because probably you're going to want to drink some while you're doing all those processing. You can see in the mid background, whoops, kind of back up there, the mid background, the cloth laid out, that's where they're drying it. And then the donkey, and he's got bags of beans ready to take them down to probably the port city that we can see in the distance. Here's a close-up of them grinding that. So this is not this is more like, in that where people are just enjoying it, where they actually grow it. So we see people in the background, and we see the mortar and pestle that he's using to grind those beans up into their version of chocolate. And this is more of a European situation where they have this special grinding board, and he talks about that in the Domestic Coffee Man, where it talks about processing it itself. And they had these sort of hollowed out marble stones and rolling pins that would go across it, and they would grind it back and forth until they ground them into a powder. And then you can see the woman over on the one side, and she is slowly you can see she's holding it up. She's slowly melting that powder and moving it around. And then on the other side of the painting, you can see the person pouring it into the molds.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, so you can stop that. That's the end of the chocolate slides. And then we're into Easter slides.
That's
Easter
right.
Slides. Woo.
Okay, so let me chat and catch up.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure this is my latest one. Okay, so a member chat from Jessica Gasparini. Townsend's live stream equals perfect Friday afternoon.
Glad you're enjoying it.
And then Speed and Style Tony, happy Easter to all my fellow nutmeggers.
Yay!
And a member chat from Iggy Bollinger, happy Easter everyone. And super chat from Max R. Cool. John, what's your favorite chocolate thing, 18th century or otherwise?
I really like the chocolate oranges at Christmas. What can I say? I probably should never eat them because they're bad for me. But I truly enjoy it. I enjoy all kinds of sweet stuff. So don't ask me terrible questions like that. Chocolate covered? No, I can't say that.
Valerie L sends in member chat. Happy Easter, Townsends and Nutmeggers. A super chat from Clay1988. Greetings from the Netherlands.
Yay.
Our culinary history isn't too broad except for pea soup with sausage.
Come on.
And syrup waffles, which...
There's plenty of great recipes from the Netherlands.
Delicious. Also, since childhood, I always have had nutmeg in my house. Love your videos.
Because you have to. Because if you don't, you're missing out. Whoa, what's going on here?
And okay, I think I'm caught up with those. And somebody was wondering how the raw beans, how do they smell? Are they fragrant?
Yeah. So, like I was mentioning, in the images, the smell on these has chocolate. And then that fermented kind of, rotten apple kind of a smell. Not in a bad way. So a little winey, right? But that's what the raw beans smell like. Definitely, you get a chocolate thing going on there. It's just kind of mixed with some other flavors, and it's a little trickier to pick the notes out.
You didn't happen to run across what a sea duck was in your research?
It's a duck from the sea?
Carolyn Watson was wondering what a sea duck was opposed to a regular duck, and we haven't run across what the difference is.
And I'm not going to make that recipe. That's one I'm not going to make. Just no way.
So let's see. Somebody was wondering if the chocolate was just a delicacy dish, just like for holidays, or whether it was kind of an everyday thing.
It is not necessarily seasonal, although the making of chocolate is seasonal, because as you're making these cakes of chocolate, And you could see that, like the person there in that one painting. These, you heat this stuff up, and then it melts. But you do have to be very, very gentle as you heat it up, or you'll ruin the flavors. Well, it's terrible. And then you cast it in those bars, but those bars will melt if they get too hot, or they won't solidify unless it's cool out. So chocolate making was the kind of thing you made not in the summer. So it's a winter, spring, and fall kind of thing. There were a lot of seasonal things that really, it's like, no, beer is going to be made in the fall and maybe in the spring. Same kind of thing. You got to have the right kind of temperatures. Chocolate, yep.
Okay, somebody was wondering about whether their impression had been that the original chocolate dishes were unsweetened, like chocolate drinks were unsweetened. And they'd also commented on how the places to get chocolate, like in London, were very popular meeting places.
Yes, so I think people are drinking it both ways. And a lot of the manufacturer of chocolate, even for the chocolate drink, starts off with sugar in it. So, but you could get it in a less sugary form. So, it could be that early on, it was a lot more coffee-like and had less sweetener in it. That's hard. That's a little conjecture for me to make. What was the second part of that one?
Oh, the chocolate houses being popular meeting places.
Very much so. Chocolate, tea, and coffee, and especially chocolate and coffee, are kind of the same thing. And you'll have coffee houses that are serving chocolate, and vice versa. I don't think you see as many chocolate houses, and especially in like Great Britain, chocolate sort of falls out of favor with the increased popularity of tea. And it kind of takes over, tea kind of takes over some of that chocolate thing going on. I don't think that's necessarily as true in America. Chocolate continues to be fairly popular. One of the reasons why is because it's less expensive. Now, why is it less expensive? It's easy enough to say, number one, we're closer to the source of supply, and the raw beans don't have to travel nearly as far to get to North America as they do if they're being transported all the way into Europe and Great Britain. But another problem is that there, in Great Britain and in other places, there are duties and taxes being paid on chocolate. Sometimes they're paying those, in the shipping when it's shipped to them, and other times the coffee houses are having to pay duties, or the chocolate makers themselves are having to pay duties. But of course, here in colonial America, we break all the rules, and they're not really charging for those sorts of things, and it's a whole lot less expensive. Here's a little excerpt of April 1759, from and after the said 5th of April 1759, it shall be paid on all coffee to be sold in wholesale or retail, and upon all chocolate to be made and sold in Great Britain by the sellers of coffee and by the makers and sellers of chocolate, on an additional duty at the rate of 1 shilling per pound weight. So we have extra rules and costs on coffee. And crazily enough, they even had, if I can find it, the special people that were in charge of doing those duties, of collecting the duties. Yes, the royal gauger. So someone who would go around like a customs officer, he'd hang around your chocolate shop while you were making coffee and make sure that it was all done right. The officer must survey twice a day or oftener, as they say, all chocolate makers when they're at work, and enter into his book at each survey the condition of the house, if people are working, if they're not working, and report how much coffee is made or chocolate is made. And then he's also to be paying attention to how many of the nuts are coming in, the raw nuts. And then it says, If he does not find 80 pounds or upwards of chocolate from 120 pounds of nut, he has a great reason to suspect the maker does not work fair. So they're paying attention to the quality. It's like, oh, there's not enough chocolate in this chocolate and all kinds of stuff. So you can imagine their chocolate being a lot more expensive, heavily regulated. And some of that chocolate that's being made in America, shh, don't tell anybody, but it was being smuggled into Great Britain because it was cheaper.
So a couple people were wondering whether the chocolate, once it got popular, whether it was added into other things like bread or chocolate cake. Did you run across recipes like that?
Chocolate biscuits and some things like chocolate puffs, some other recipes, chocolate cream, but not into anything like bread that I have seen. If you want a weird and crazy, another recipe that we will not do that has chocolate, I don't even know how to pronounce this one. It's some strange name. Take a quart of cream. Put in it a bit of sugar, a stick of cinnamon, a bit of green lemon peel, a quarter pound of chocolate broken into pieces. Boil it all together. Your chocolate being well mixed and boiled and your cream palatable, take it off and then take 2 or 3 gizzards of either fowl or chickens and open them and take out the skins and wash and cut them small. Then put these skins in a cup or other vessel with a glass of lukewarm cream and put it near the fire. And then you mix it. It's got gizzards in it. I'm not making chocolate with gizzards in it.
There is a super chat from Jonah Zaslaw. Have you ever been to Lexington, Massachusetts for the Lexington Green Battle or Battle Road?
No, I haven't. I've heard about it.
Fun.
It sounds exciting.
Also, love the videos. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then an off-topic question from Webfoot. Webfoot Enterprises, where did you get the tools for the workshop?
I did a whole bunch of searching around on eBay, and also there's a great tool site. What's it named? Jimbo Tools. If you're interested in looking for, sometimes you just want to look at pretty tools from the 18th century or 19th century or 20th century for that. Jimbo Tools has just gorgeous tools and things to look at. So I would suggest their site.
I dropped it in the chat.
Wonderful.
Okay, I think, do you want to move on to eggs?
Let me see. I probably got another 3 hours of chocolate
Right,
stuff. We can move
true.
on to eggs. We can move on to eggs. Here I've got. Well, our chickens have been laying, and this one came out the. Wait, that. It's the ostrich egg. Sorry, I just had to do that. Yes, eggs. So it was Easter time, and the question is did they have cool looking decorated eggs in the 18th century? And I was on Facebook, and this picture of this 18th century egg popped up, and I, top of my head blew off, and I went, what? They have cool decorated Easter eggs. So I had to do the research on that. Of course, I immediately, within seconds, sent that picture to Lauren because she has always enjoyed doing the Pasanka eggs, the dyed eggs. You use a wax resist, and you do this really neat design work. Now, the eggs that we saw there were similar, but they're done in a slightly different manner. So in our 18th century time period, was it mostly German Dutch?
Yes, very much so.
It's coming mostly from that tradition, the Dutch German tradition. And they would take eggs and they would dye them with onion skins?
Yes,
Onion skins.
almost primarily onions. They use some other dyes, but
So
onions
that gives you this kind of rich orangey brown color?
It varies. It's like you can get that kind of pale tan or all the way to a deep red, depending on whether you're dyeing on a white egg or a brown egg.
Right.
And how rich
Right.
and long you dye it for.
And then to make the design, instead of using wax resist, which would have made it easy, guys, if they would have known that, they sort of etched or scratched away the dyed portion, correct? Is that what they
That's
did?
right. These are mostly scratch eggs. They're doing
Right.
in our time period.
So we're going to take a look?
Yes. Let's
Let's
okay,
jump.
the first one.
Okay. This is English?
Yes,
one
this is English.
So this is an English-designed egg, and it is painted. So they had fancy eggs, but they painted on them. They painted on everything. They like that, being crazy like that. So there's a English. I don't even know exactly what this scene is. Sort of a domestic
I think it's
dancing.
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 Yeah, outside.
Really weird. Okay, fun. But here is now. These aren't from the time period, right? These are just done the same way.
No. I really got the sense that while the eggs do last for years and years, it's rare for them to last all the way. For,
Yeah.
This
Because you're
200
scratching that in, you're weakening the egg itself, and so they don't last as long. Now these aren't blown out; they're boiled.
They are. They hard boil them, and so the yolk is it's there inside, dried up,
Yeah.
and you can rattle it around.
Yeah.
Now I expect that these modern ones are probably blown out,
Would
but
they stink?
I think it dries up and you don't really notice. But the ones in the museums that are from the time period, they'll have the yolk inside all
Well, and
dried
that
up.
probably makes them weaker too, because that
True.
will rattle against it and break if it's all. That's weird. Weird. Okay. Yeah. So this now we see the onions here, right? And we see a basket of eggs. And the story is, do we tell the story? We're going to tell the story. I didn't know whether I want to tell the story or not. They would only decorate fertilized eggs.
Right? Because it seemed to be that the eggs are like for good luck and for blessing and that. And you would give
fertility
them
symbol.
Right, and you would give them as gifts, and
Right.
it's new life for spring. So
Right.
that was one of the things that they were looking for in the egg. And so I think that's what she's doing. I think she's planning on painting these eggs because it's showing the painting and
Right.
the onions. But we know for sure that she's checking the eggs because that's what the title of the picture.
So there you go. And this is, now this isn't an original. Lauren did this because the original image is copyrighted. So she made this is an inspired version of an 18th century image of a rabbit with a basket of colored eggs. Yes, and so it's from somewhere between 1795 and 1800.
Right? There was a schoolmaster, and apparently he made this as like a present for some of his students who did particularly well.
Wow.
And I think there's at least 2 examples that he did.
That is crazy.
And I did not think I did not know that the Easter rabbit went this far back. So
Right.
here he
So,
is.
Yeah, he looks a little more vicious than today's Easter rabbit.
He looks very
with
brave.
the,
He's going to get those
with
eggs
the
delivered.
tongue or whatever and everything. It was like, maybe he's collecting eggs, not giving them away. I don't know. With that kind of a look. What else we got? Oh, there we go. Here's some of Lauren. Wow. So, if you've got egg questions, you'll have to ask Lauren. I mean, I think I've done 1 or 2 or 3, but I'm sure none of them are in here because they would have been hideously ugly. Some of mine would be like, abstract art. So, yeah. What happened to your egg, Dad? All right.
Well, there was also the tragic. We had the eggs on a tree, a small branch that was in the middle of the table, and one of the cats knocked it over a couple years ago, and we lost many eggs in the grate.
Probably my best ones.
Probably. That's what happened.
I made this one that was really, really good.
Okay, so there's a super chat from Clay 1988. Wasn't aware that egg coloring came from Holland. I thought it was just a regular worldwide Easter egg hunting thing, and I'm old.
Old!
And there are definitely, like the Pasanka egg that I do. They're from they're
19th century or what?
They are 19th century, and they came over with as a Ukrainian tradition. So there are definitely different traditions of egg decorating, but apparently most of it isn't English. Like, sure, it comes from all over other places, but just not English.
I'll jump in here before I'll let you grab up a couple questions. I try to every week talk about or whenever I have a live stream. The brand new people on Patreon, brand new people on Townsends Plus, Frank Hassin, Jonathan Miller, and Patty Curley. Thank you so much. When people are part of these things, like Catherine F. and Andre E. and Dave V. and Lillian A., they make it possible for me to have more live streams. I'll just say it like that, guys. Thank you for your amazing support.
Are you going to go back to your chocolate?
Okay, yes, I can go back and touch on a couple chocolate things. This is from Dictionary Johnson. You know, Ben Johnson does a dictionary in the 18th century. Chocolate. Number one, it's the nut of a cacao tree. Or it's a mass made by grinding the kernel of the cocoa nut to be dissolved in hot water. Or number three, a liquor made by a solution of chocolate. Nowhere in that is the definition of a candy that you would eat, or, you know, it's like, no, when you say chocolate, they're thinking the drink or the stuff the drink is made from. And a chocolate house, where a house where company is entertained with chocolate. I don't think we, it's like, really? We needed a definition of a chocolate house? No, I guess it's as opposed to a house made of chocolate. Which, I mean, it could happen. I mean, you know. And when I was looking at the laws for chocolate, I thought this was, so, you know, here they've got the chocolate judge, you know, in your chocolate house. But they also had rules about making chocolate at home. If any person shall be minded to make chocolate for his own family and not for sale, he shall give notice thereof under his hand to the officer of the division 3 days before he begins to make, in which notice shall be specified the quantity of cocoa nuts designed to be made into chocolate and the name of the person to be employed in the making of it. So, be careful.
Serious.
Be careful making chocolate at home, people. You gotta get your permit, your chocolate making permit. It's no wonder it was so expensive.
So a couple notes on the eggs. So I believe it was Elise who was wondering if she missed the part where we found out the connection between the eggs and the Easter rabbit to Easter, and where that can, and Heather Torrey had made a comment, and she was saying that the symbolism of eggs, often decorated as a charm of spring and fertility, is very, very old and somewhat universal. And yes, we, you know, as I was going along,
grafted onto,
right
yes.
there, it was so old that it was so much farther back than our time period that
they didn't have Easter eggs in the Bible. Let's just say like that, okay?
And then somebody else was commenting about elderberry being used for the dyes. Mm-hmm. And they did, when I was looking at some of the other dyes other than onion, it mentioned black walnut hulls and oak bark for deep brown and black.
Wow.
Hickory bark for yellow, red cabbage, and if you let it oxidize, that forms a deep green. And
wow.
Then elderberries, currants, or pokeberries for magenta, and then some other herbs and roots like maybe turmeric for yellow or beets for pink.
Those sound like so much more fun colors than, you know, the packets of...
I'm sure they turned out beautiful.
Sounds like fun. Of course, you know, are you going to get packets of, you know, pokeweed powder and... Well,
we could make some magenta colored eggs if we just, and they said reconstitute, because of course you'd have to dry it, because, and then wait all the way back into the...
Well, you could make your eggs when it's pokeweed time, and then...
That's true, but it really did seem like...
I wonder if it oxidizes, though, and changes color over time.
Could be. They really, it sounded like they didn't do the egg decorating all throughout the year. It was very seasonal, that they really it was part of the celebration.
And it's always been, yeah, exactly. The actual decoration of it is part of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if they do that. I don't know if kids do that now, but I know I did it as a kid. Well, we're going to decorate eggs. Okay.
Well, this Maisie says turmeric makes a beautiful yellow egg. So they've actually tested it out. Turned out beautiful. Daniel Banks sends in a member chat. Happy Easter. Thanks for a fun tavern visit.
Daniel Banks. I always have more, but I can't always find exactly what I needed. Oh, yes. Yes, I remembered. Chocolate as medicine, right? So in the 18th century, food is oftentimes considered medicine. And in the medical books, they talk about things like that. And I thought this was interesting. This one is in the London Pharmacopoeia from the 18th century. And it talks about, what it's good for, what it's bad for. And then this one pops up. This London physician, the patient was in a miserable condition, but taking to the supping of chocolate, he recovered in a short time. Wouldn't we all? But what was more extraordinary is that his wife, in complacency to her husband, having also accustomed herself to sup chocolate with him, bore afterwards several children, though she was looked upon as not being capable of having any. Amazing medical stories. It's a cure for all things, including if you are puny. Apparently this person he was in a miserable condition. And chocolate is, if chocolate produces good effects, chocolate produces good effects when used moderately. It also does bad ones when it's taken to excess or mixed with too many sharp drugs, from which it causes considerable fermentations in the humors and heats much, and therefore is not good for bilious people. It also hinders people to sleep because it exalts the principle caused too great a rarefaction in the humors, or caffeine as we would know it. I knew there was something good in chocolate. How we doing, guys?
I have an off-topic question from earlier in the stream. They were wondering if we'd ever thought about doing a video about Irish immigration in either the 18th or the 19th centuries.
Well, if you go back in and look at the Maggie Delaney story, it certainly touches on the topic. That's definitely a bit of a different kind of a video for us, but you can search that one out. And she touches on the Irish indentured servants. One of the great references here for chocolate is the Domestic Coffee Man. And the Domestic Coffee Man has preparations and talking about, coffee, talking about obviously Coffee Man, coffee, tea, and chocolate. And they all kind of clumped together in the 18th century. And in fact, the Domestic Coffee Man as a book starts with chocolate. It doesn't start with coffee. And he talks about, where the beans come from and how to choose them and how to roast them and get their little shells off, which nobody really describes it as much as you want to. He even talks about making it up into the pans, into these little bars. And part of the rules for making them up into bars is that you would make 1 pound bars, half-pound bars, and quarter-pound bars. And that's it. And they couldn't be any less or greater than those. Those were the standardized. Now, of course, here in America, we probably made up everything we wanted because we didn't have all those terrible, crazy rules about exactly how big your chocolate bars are supposed to be. You make sure to cast them in metal molds, not in wood molds, because if you do, then you can't get it out. And I don't know why he would tell us that, because it seemed to be, obvious to me, especially after I cast up my first one, and it was really sticky. But here is how it's made in a coffee house. Put a half a pound of your pre-made chocolate, and some 3/4 of a. Oh wait, let's see. I'm trying to figure out what he means here. In the way of coffee houses, viz., some put 1/2 pound and some 3/4 of a pound of all-nut. That's the stuff without sugar. And as much sugar to a gallon of water. And let it boil 7 or 8 minutes or till they see it break through the head. So boiling a lot, I guess. But this is not to be discerned in all chocolate through the carelessness and knavishness of the maker. Likewise, the quantity of sugar in this composition, I think, too much for what will please one may not please another, so that if less was put in, it would be better. I love the way these things are written in the time period. And if it is not sweet enough for some, give them more sugar. Well, and then he talks about putting flour in sometimes. So now for a good breakfast, take water, a quart. Sugar, chocolate made with sugar, 1/2 pound. Fine flour, a quarter of an ounce of fine flour. Brandy, a quartern. I'm not sure exactly how much that is, or somewhat more, and a little salt. Mill it well, let it boil about 8 minutes, then mill it again, brew it well, and it is done. And then he also has the milk chocolate recipe in here where you use milk instead of water. And then we have our wine chocolate, which uses a pint of good sherry, a sugared chocolate, 1/2 pound of flour, and some salt, and boiling it 10 minutes. And then another wine chocolate. So lots of fun ways to do it. And he continues to talk about chocolate for another page and a half before he moves on to the important topic of coffee.
You gonna tell them the good news about the morel mushrooms?
Yeah. So this time of year, everybody's on tiptoes, waiting around here. Are the morel mushrooms going to pop out of the ground, and when are they going to do it? It usually happens in about another week or so, and then you might find morels all the way into Mother's Day is about the very tail of toast, total end of the season for that. Very, very short season. 2 weeks usually, sometimes as long as 3 weeks. Well, the first morel mushroom has been found in Kosciuszko County, so everybody's going to be out traipsing around looking for the gold in the forest. Hopefully, I think we've got a warm weather coming up next week. You need a nice warm nights, and then that just sends them out like crazy. And it's been raining and raining and raining, so we've got lots of moisture. So hopefully it's not too wet for the morels. It has to be just right. They're really picky, and you got to be careful when you're walking around, and they'll hide. So you got to walk gently and bring your mushroom stick with you. If you're interested in the morels, you can make sure to check the back catalog, and you'll find our morel mushroom episode. Loved it. Love it. And I'm gonna they like to pop up in Mom's yard, and we'll have to go and check for them in the next couple of days and find some morel mushrooms.
Janelle Voigt said that they're already out in Oklahoma.
Oh, well, of course. Tell me all about it. Make me jealous. Yeah, the morel season is this shifting band starting in Tennessee and then, moving all the way up into upper Michigan as you go later and later in the season. So if you're a really morel crazy person, you start, sort of in the Mid-South, and you just follow them as they continue to pop up, and you hunt your way all the way up into Canada.
Somebody was wondering what your favorite dish, savory dish, not chocolate, savory dish was from the 18th century.
Actually, I really do enjoy the lobscouse that we did in the Poor Sailor episode. It's always one that I remember, even though I don't make that up. It's not something my wife is like, oh, I'm going to make lobscouse tonight. But it's always one that catches me when I make it again for an episode, and just like, boy, this was so good. Love those potatoes, and crazily enough, those ship's biscuits that kind of are cooked and they have this crunchy, meaty, thickness to them. Great texture, just so good, so good.
The Grand Imperium of Attica says, you should go to the Spirit of Vincent's rendezvous in Vincennes, Indiana. I realized that you are stationed in Indiana, and I wanted to tell you about it. I live and reenact there.
Yeah, it's about 5 or 6 hours away. I have been in there, but it's many years ago. It's on Memorial Day weekend for that event. It is super great event, and I love the area.
Raleigh Wellborn says, what was the most popular 18th and 19th century Easter Sunday tradition?
You caught me off on that one. I have no idea. They probably went to church. And I don't know about the celebrations specifically other than that. I haven't done a lot of research on that particular holiday,
Yeah,
at least in the 18th century.
The ones we're talking about, like the egg decoration, and they talk about other egg-related ones. They seem to be very specifically German Dutch, and it talked about how the other cultures, that's not what they did. Now, it didn't actually go into what their Easter.
It's probably a lot more like Christmas and some of those other holidays. It depends on the culture, and some of them are all about a particular kind of external celebration, one that's obvious, and then some of these other cultures, like the English, depending on which, let's say, there's multiple traditions there too. So some of them are very, it's like, no, we're gonna think about this instead of have an outward celebration. So.
All right. Anything else you wanted to cover?
No.
I'm all caught up.
I just went zipping through the chocolate. We just have a super good time. Really so happy to have everyone in here and have a good time in the tavern. I want to thank Lauren and Ivy for being behind the scenes here on today's episode. It's been tremendous to be here with you. I hope you have a wonderful Good Friday and Easter weekend. I know some of you guys have holidays like Canada. You have Monday off and all that. Because, what a bunch of cheaters. Anyway, have a wonderful weekend.